Hello. Thanks for joining, everyone. This is Casey Sweeney here. I'm a program officer. Thank you all for joining. I know we're going through a new webinar software, so hope it was smooth. I've muted myself a couple times when I didn't mean to, so bear with us as we are working on new technology pieces. We'll solicit your feedback afterwards as your thoughts on it. Well, thanks again for everyone for being here. I'm joined, happy to say that I'm joined as a co-organizer today with Jessica Kessler. She'll be helping answer your questions today, as I will be. The topic is host site management, as you can see. And when we were thinking about preparing for this webinar, we're thinking throughout the duration of this series, we've wanted to provide webinars that had some meaningful content. And when we were thinking about host site management, just our level of engagement with host sites is not the same as you program directors are involved in. So we reached out to some of your peers, and Connie Benton, the past AmeriCorps director, will be the first one to start us off. She'll be presenting on host site training and data collection. Well, that's what we've asked her to present on. I know she's got a few more things than that. And John Babbitt, also from WARS, will follow Connie, and he'll be singing on host site match and monitoring. Originally, those topics were going to be covered by Patricia Balke. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here today, so John has so graciously filled in. I know both presenters have, given a fair amount of their extra time to prepare for today, so a huge thanks to them. And just before we begin, I have a few other announcements. So in the spirit of making these webinars during the Training and Technical Assistance webinar series available to all, including those who do not have host sites, we've also set up alternative resources in Wigio. And Amy was the one who prepared these. They're meant to be a starting point for trainers when you're looking to fulfill training requirements stipulated in your grant. So I will change my screen here in a moment and show you all these resources in Wigio, so you know where to find them. If you're on here and you don't have host sites, then this resource is essentially designed for you, really is available to all. So I'm going through, and I just went to our webinar recordings folder. We have all of the previous recordings in here, and let's see, I'm looking for the July one. And these two resources at the bottom, the citizenship training example, comes from Boys and Girls Club of Greater Milwaukee, I believe. And then there is this large document that I had referenced. Just pull it up. So this is, essentially, you're required in your grant agreement to provide citizenship training to your members. So here are some that we've researched, not endorsing any particular one, but here's maybe a starting point for you if you're trying to find a new conflict resolution trainer or resources, whatever it might be. So check that out, whether you have host sites or not. But if you don't have host sites, this is probably one of the most valuable things you'll see come out of this webinar today. And then just to briefly mention, there's a couple resources that I've found, whether coming from us or different commissions, different states, different programs from different states, all the way down to things prepared by CNCS. So CNCS just recently did a webinar on host site and member monitoring, so you can find that here on Wigio. So check out all those. Additionally, we have posted 5 handouts that Connie and John will focus on today. Those can be found in your GoToWebinar control panel, and you can download those there or additionally on Wigio. So both locations, but figured we put them in the handouts today so you can grab all of those because they'll probably be the focus points. All right, and then let's see. And then, so I mentioned you can either raise your hand or ask questions. There's a raise hand feature that you can use so that we can unmute your microphone if you'd like to ask a question that way. Otherwise, Jessica and I will be hopefully answering your questions throughout the duration of the webinar if you ask it in the chat box. And we're going to start off today with a poll to just gauge where everyone's at. So you should see a poll come up in a few moments. If you can all just indicate your response to that. You should only have to click. You can, just to let you know how that poll works, you can click multiple answers. You should be able to, if they all fit. I'm seeing a couple ones come in. We're already at 57%. I'll give a few more seconds for those who are still working on it. Great. So I'll share the results of that. So looks like most of you all responded, and the most popular there is, how to effectively monitor your host sites. So we'll be looking forward to hearing from that. But this just gives a sense of what you all are looking for. So thanks. So with those housekeeping items, I'll turn it over to you, Connie. I'm going to hand you over these controls if you're ready.
I am.
All righty. All right, you should have it now.
I see my PowerPoint, but I can't seem to control it. Here we go. I think we're good. All right. Good. Hi, everyone. Greetings today. So
Connie, we don't see your PowerPoint at the moment.
You don't. Okay. You don't see it. Casey, this worked so good when we were...
when we practiced.
I didn't see that screen come up, though, where you handed it over to me like we did when we were doing the screen share. So
sure. I'm going to take it back over and hand it back over to you.
There we go.
Yes. Now we see it.
Okay. Now we see it?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Okay, greetings everyone. So, I pulled together some ideas. Well, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Connie Betton. I'm the director of the Partners for After School Success Program here in Madison. We have 25 host sites and 13 partner agencies that we work with, and we've been structured like that since the beginning of our program, which is going into its 11th year. So we've had a good amount of experience learning from hard knocks, what worked and what didn't in our host site partnership, I'll call it, because it really is a partnership. So I just want to share some of those lessons learned, and I also know a lot of you have ideas, so please share those as we go along if something I'm talking about sparks some ideas. So it really is, in my mind, getting host sites ready to host and creating a positive, productive relationship. I think it's important to lay the groundwork from the get-go. From the very moment you're recruiting host sites to make sure in your application for host site recruitment it includes all relevant information that you need to make your decision, and for them to make a decision if this is something they really want to sign up for. We all know that AmeriCorps has a lot of very unique rules, and I think transparency is important from the beginning so there are no surprises. During our recruitment, I hold an informational meeting as well as get the paper application. I just found that being able to have conversation and answer questions more in depth with host site applicants is very important. It's also an opportunity for me to lay out what AmeriCorps is and what it is not. And we just do that in an exchange, and it's found to be a really good process during the application. I also want to note that in your handouts you're going to see the handouts there listed on the GoToWebinar. We have the application that we used in 2015, so if you want to call that up to reference it, you can, and I'll pull it up in a moment just to point out a few things. You also want to ensure in your application and moving forward that the host site programming, what they do, aligns with your AmeriCorps grant goals, so you're not putting a round peg into a square hole from the beginning or trying to all do gymnastics to make it fit. It really should align well from the beginning. I think related to that is there's a shared vision. Our vision is we want to help middle and high school students succeed in school, improve their reading and their grades and their engagement in school, ultimately their graduation rates. Do you share that vision for our young people in our community? So when we're all together on that vision, it's easier to get through some of the difficult times where you're working with the nitty-gritty of rules or decision-making, because we can all remember we're all in it for the right reason in the big picture. So I think that's an important thing to make sure you cover with new host sites coming in. Also review all the host site benefits, the benefits to them of having a core member. There are many. The requirements, we all know those are many, and the risks. There are financial implications. There's a match. There's also disallowed costs, and I think, again, to be very transparent about that. We send out our MOU or attach it with the application. I've also given Casey a copy of that that's been uploaded, and it's a hefty document. But again, I want people to know what they're signing up for from the beginning. And it lists our role, their role, and some of our obligations together, as well as prohibited activities, non-displacement rules, and everything they need to know. Clearly identifying your role, meaning us as the grant holder, and how we're going to support them as a host site. I also go into this knowing, like, host sites are our friends. We need them. They have a nimbleness, and they're out in the community, and they are connected to their community partners, their schools. They've been around. All of our host sites are either private, small community and neighborhood centers, or youth resource centers, and we work with the Madison School and Community Rec. We need them to do this program. We couldn't do it alone. And then they need the county, our size, our fiscal backing, some of the resources we bring. So together we do pass, and we really all articulated in the community as a public-private partnership. I just want to highlight a couple things in, so the first is the application. Can everybody see that now? Hello? Oh, hello? Casey?
Yeah, Connie, we can see it.
Okay, you can see it. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. So this is really our application we use, and we lay out what is AmeriCorps in brief, what is PASS, specifically what do we do, the link to our website, seeking new partners, and some bullet points on what's expected, the calendar, including the informational meeting, due dates, and whatnot. A couple things to highlight is we've really embedded more and more, particularly some of the requirements around where we've known things have fallen down. So what's your infrastructure? How are you going to be able to support a member? That's critical. The fiscal match, of course, is important as well. And does the community need align with what we're doing? Data collection has become more and more important. Do you have some infrastructure in place to be able to do that? And then their in-kind support and what they would bring to the partnership. In the youth programming component, we lay out what our core activities are and then ask them very specifically, as you can see here, really highlighting that this is to enhance and expand capacity, not to replace or displace any current employees, and we repeat that a few times. We didn't do this in 2015, but moving forward, we'll send the non-displacement rules along with other materials in the application, and then we ask very specifically what the member will be doing. Can they provide a 1,700-hour experience? Do they have a service club and whatnot? And then at the bottom, actually there should be a signature line here. It must have gotten dropped when I was amending it. But underneath this disclaimer is a signature line when they submit their application that they read those attachment C. So we just really begin addressing that from the beginning. So let me close that one out. The second one I just want to show you is our MOU, and I won't go through this because it is really long, but you can just use it as you might see fit. We outline our responsibilities, which are many, and the host sites, which are actually many more, and then all the prohibited activities and other rules that go with it. You'll also find at the very end, I believe we attach the member agreement, and then another expectation sheet. The other thing I gave you is with new host sites, we've prepared just this to-do list. When we have finished our recruitment of a new host site, I send this out to them. Actually, this is part of a training meeting with all of the things they need to get in place and when they're due to me in order for them to be fully on board. And it includes everything from getting materials ready with protocols, preparing their website to announce for recruitment, making sure they have the logo posted, preparing a member workspace, making their linkages to schools, etc., and then to keep breathing because it's a lot. And I'm there to be a resource to them, but they really need to make sure they're getting things done. The prohibited activities, I just want to touch on this for a moment. A lot of our host sites are 501c3s or government agencies in the school district, and they align with what we can't do. So they can't lobby or organize or be politically active. They're not able to engage in religious belief promotion and things like that. Most of them are not going to be referring for abortions, but I cover this nonetheless. But there's a huge danger area with prohibited activities in the not-for-profit world, and that is the non-displacement and non-supplementation. You really have to review this in detail, and I'll tell you why. Cross-training in a not-for-profit is a common survival tactic. They have small staffs, they have employees that are cross-trained, all hands on deck is the norm. Their position descriptions are suggestions, and they always have another duties as assigned included. Having worked in the not-for-profit world for a long time, it's very common. So to have a member come in who has to stay in their lane and do what's only required in the grant is going to be very foreign to any not-for-profit agency. So I would recommend you really need to monitor that closely and constantly, particularly for startup host sites and then during any staff transitions. This is not only supervisor staff transitions, but other staff transitions, so you really need to set up an expectation with host sites to let you know when changes happen. And it can be very subtle. but it's really going to be foreign for not-for-profits to not want to use members in all different ways to plug holes. I also educate our members on these rules so they know to let me know if they're being asked to do something that doesn't seem quite right. I let host sites know I am educating members on that so it doesn't seem like they're, you know, talking out of turn or something, that this is a huge important rule in AmeriCorps and everyone needs to be aware of it. Getting everybody ready, so training. New site, I shared with you the new site training and checklist. I actually meet with new sites to go through that. It includes this 2-hour supervisor orientation, but also covers a lot more because it covers everything they need to do to get their infrastructure set up. And then we have sort of an ongoing communication, mainly through email once they're set up. But anyone who's going to be working with a member needs to be a part of that. I should say anyone who has responsibility for a member, because often there are other youth workers at a site I don't train, but anyone who's going to be supervising, maybe approving hours, and the past director for that agency need to partake. I do it, at least it's a 2-hour supervisory orientation before anyone can supervise a member or approve hours. So if there's a change in a supervisor midterm, we need to be proactive so there isn't a gap. Directors are trained if there's a week or two where there's an overlap, but that's just, you know, you simply can't approve hours unless you've gone through the orientation with me. We do an annual kickoff meeting with all of our supervisors and directors in late August before our term starts on September 1st, and we cover what we accomplished the year before as well as what's new for the new year. Often that has to do with performance measure protocol changes or new rules coming into AmeriCorps that they need to be aware of, and always reminders of the existing rules. So this year we're going to again cover the non-displacement. I'm going to share with them that email Jessica sent us with all the very clear examples, and we're going to go through that in detail so supervisors have that most current information. I have supervisors attend member trainings when we go over performance measures and metrics. So when we train the members, I have the supervisors come in so they're all getting the same information again. For some supervisors it's a repeat, but they can be experts. For other supervisors, it's new to them. It helps the members that sometimes their supervisor is at a member training. They just feel like they're all working on things together. We'll do some lectures, some small groups, some brainstorming, some application, and that's a nice way to have supervisors and host sites really be a part of what members are learning about the performance measures and metrics. I hold monthly meetings with all the host site directors. So for some of our sites, the director is the supervisor, the smaller not-for-profits. For others, the director is a few steps above the supervisor, and we meet monthly to address policy, big picture, planning for past, where we're going to go. You know, one of the things we're facing now is, do we change our model because recruitment for full-time slots continues to be a challenge? Well, that's not a decision I can make unilaterally because they have to execute it. So those kind of big picture planning, structural decisions have to be made collaboratively, and that's where we do that, brainstorming. Very often we'll break out with a work group so we can do more of the nitty-gritty and then bring it back. But any big changes like that would not be made without everyone being on board. And then we just train on new issues as needed. As we all know, stuff comes up through the year, and I'll send out emails, I'll pull meetings together. A lot of times it goes through the director meeting, but making sure that we're doing what we need to do. Staying in touch and communication is really ongoing. As I said earlier, this is a partnership. So I define myself as a resource to the host sites. I want them to know that there's no way they can stay on top of all of the AmeriCorps rules. There's simply too many. They're too complicated. The core ones, the big prohibited activities, they know, but all the nitty-gritty about they can't remember. Is it 15% if a member leaves, they get a net award? I don't expect them to commit all that to memory. So I am a resource for them, and the message to them is when there's a change in a member's status or something percolating or something going on at the host site, call me, we'll figure it out together. I would rather we be reminded, and some of it's in policy, but some of it isn't, and they need to get a hold of me. I often include host site supervisors on work groups. Right now we're doing one on rolling out a new metric, and we have 2 supervisors, 2 alumni, and myself figuring out the best way to make changes for our program. I invite them to be some of the trainers and presenters and often get their input on what we're doing. And that kind of ownership makes accountability much easier in the long run when there's a problem that I need to address. And we've had very few. We went through our storming phase about 5 years ago. We're definitely at a performing phase now, but there were some rocky points in the past. Proactive communication, I have found to be very effective. We do a ropes course day during orientation where all the supervisors, directors, and members are together. It's mostly team building. It's very fun and very positive way to kick off the year. Again, I talked about the monthly meetings and the August kickoff. I do twice a year host site visits. So I'm actually on the ground at host sites meeting with the member, their supervisor, and the past director, and I have a whole checklist of what we go over. It's, depends on the time of the year and the term, and I didn't post those, but I can if that would be helpful. And then I copy supervisors into any member communication that will require some member action. So our philosophy is the member, we want to give them some responsibility, but a lot of them are young or in new work positions. Some of them just aren't very organized. And supervisor, you're the second one to make sure they hit this deadline and things are happening. So I often include them in those communications. Onto the programming and data collection. And this, in a multi-site program, one of your challenges, even before you begin collecting data, is making sure you're running programs with Fidelity. You have multiple sites, and one of the challenges that PASS is one of their responsibilities. You have to remember that they're often doing other programs. They have a board of directors, other stakeholders, other funders, other demands to their job, and both the site and the supervisor, and PASS is one piece. So creating fidelity and consistency between host sites is really your foundation before you even think about collecting data. So we spend a lot of time on that. Host sites may have turnover. I know in our world, youth workers, if you get 3 years out of a youth worker, that's a good tenure. Supervisors, 3 to 5 is really a good block of time. So right now, they're having trouble hiring other youth work staff, so the quality of some of the staff coming in is not as high as it's maybe been. And sometimes members are working with staff that we don't train or have contact with, so they're colleagues or they're other employees at the host site. And this is an area I actually haven't quite figured out how to bridge. We don't, they don't report to us, so it's hard to have that same control, if you will, over some of the messaging, but we do work with supervisors to make sure they are informing their other staff of the AmeriCorps role, because sometimes you'll hear, well, why can't they do this or that, or why can't they, fill in, and it's really important that supervisors be keeping other staff up to speed on what AmeriCorps members can and can't do. And then distance can just be a challenge. We're across Dane County, and I find distance a challenge at times, and we can come together. So I know statewide host sites really have to rely on technology, these kind of webinar vehicles and other ways to stay connected, because that can be a real challenge. So some of the solutions we have found, as I said earlier, joint meetings between members and supervisors, making sure everyone is on the same page. Developing program curriculums, written curriculums, and then performance measure protocols, scripts, to use across host sites. That's how one way we've really worked on some uniformity across all host sites, particularly when it comes to our performance measures, whether we're doing our literacy tutoring or our extended learning program, which is our after school. And one thing we've done is we've developed a real-time centralized tracking system. So let me show you this, and we're actually going to build on this year. So we call it the PASS Resource Center, and historically it's been where we've housed something like Wigio, actually, where we put, so QRI resources, hold on, it's logged me out. Okay. We house QRI is our literacy tutoring, so we have literacy tutoring tools, and the QRI is our quality reading inventory is our pre and post. So we've listed resources for members, and this is primarily how we use the site for many years. 2 years ago, we went to a system of, and this was also one effort to bring all the host sites together, that members had a one-stop shop to get resources on QRIs and literacy, and we weren't relying on host sites to parse that out for us. A couple of years ago, we went to our student engagement survey, was the pre-post tool we used for our outcome measure for our after-school programming. We're actually moving away from that, but I'm just this is what we're using this year for illustration purposes. We were using paper copies. It was way too much. There was just paper flying over. We served 1,400 kids. It was just absurd. So we said, we've got to put this in an online system. So we did. We created for every one of our host sites, which you'll see listed on the left, is a survey link for the SES. So I'll just pick Blackhawk Middle School here. And so the student would take this directly, and all of the asterisk fields are required, and then you go through, and it's every question that's on the SES. So just so I'm an 8th grader, I'm at Blackhawk Middle School, and I go to Blackhawk School, but I also go to Kennedy Heights Community Center, and so that's important that we were able to see that we had one student who was attending to, because these are geographically very close, and there isn't a lot of duplication, but some of our kids do go to both. And then they would go through all of the questions related that are in the survey, and I'm not going to go through all of these because it would just take too long, but you can kind of see how that worked, and then you get to the end. Linked to the survey and is a spreadsheet that and this really isn't confidential information, but I just want you to see it's time and date stamped. And what was really useful with this tool for me is this was real-time data. So I did not need to wait until quarterly reports to see if members were collecting outcome data. I could go in at any point, and Allison, I have a LTE who helps with the outcome stuff. We could go in and check, are members getting these done? Because by the time we would learn in December, it was way too late to do a pre for kids who started programming in September. And then you can see all of their survey answers are downloaded. We have race, federal disadvantaged criteria, and then attendance data for Q1, 2, and 3. When students take the post tests, it's also downloaded and date stamped, and then it makes analysis much easier because Allison can a query for duplicates by creating one master spreadsheet and pair up pre and post tests to do the analysis without a lot of cutting and pasting. The kids who are highlighted here also go to Kennedy and Vera, so that's where we knew at Blackhawk we had some kids doing both. And so there is a link between host site and spreadsheet for every single host site we have available. At the bottom, you see just some of our links for the Proctor script, school engagement survey, and enhancing school attendance protocols. So and we have the survey in Spanish. So this is one way we have worked to collect data. What we're going to do for 16-17, this upcoming term, is we're going to do the same thing we have here for our new metric, for all of our literacy tutoring, because I want to get real-time monitoring capacity for our QRI profiles. I'm finding as I'm analyzing them this year that there's some things I just didn't catch. So. And we want to have that same capacity. And we're also going to add a link for members to do all of their quarterly reporting in this site. So what we're creating is a one-stop shop for everything, all of our data collection, our monitoring. And just so you know, members only have permission to use their host site. So all of the kids' information is confidential. I, of course, can access all of it. And then for summer tracking, our programs kind of break into different systems for summer tracking, and we have a different spreadsheet for the community center summer camps. If a student already hadn't been registered, we have an abbreviated sheet for summer. Again, it helps us cull duplicates for kids who might change sites over the summer. So that is how we do our tracking, and we have found it to be very useful to real time in particular in staying on top of information. That's what I have on that. Can I answer any questions? Or Casey, did you want to go to John?
Wonderful. Thanks, Connie. I saw a few questions come in, and we've been fielding them. Most of the one question I got, Connie, was whether the figure you had mentioned for host site match was a figure for each member or individually, so I provided what the figure was in your MOU.
Yep, that figure is for each member. So if you have 2 or 3 members, multiply it by 2 or 3.
Mm-hmm. And full-time members.
And that's the full-time, yes. So the match, oh boy, I won't even get into it. We have a very complicated process for, actually it might be an attachment C in our MOU. We've had to just create some additional policy on who remains responsible if a member changes sites, who remains responsible if a member exits early. This year we had so much changing of members and converting of slots that after multiple spreadsheets to try and make it fair and yet cover all our costs, we just said everyone's just going to pay their match that they agreed to because it was just too complicated to convert. So there are just some nuances to the match that you need to sometimes work out different policies because things happen during the term. But the number you see in the first couple pages, that's per member, and that's the, we say it's the what you'll pay, but the county is very clear that if, if for some reason we run a deficit, which we never have, we usually have a surplus, but if in the event for some reason there is a deficit, that host sites know the match may go up so that they would cover it because we can't use general purpose revenue to cover the grant deficit. So that's built into our MOU.
Wonderful. Thanks, Connie.
Sure.
a really, really great presentation. I would give you a virtual round of applause. Unfortunately, we don't have that feature yet.
You guys are funny.
And a reminder for everyone, if you do want to ask a question via microphone, you can do that by raising your hand, or you can just send it in the chat box as you've traditionally done. Connie's going to stick around for more if questions come up at the end. We're going to have more question and answer time available then. Otherwise, I'm going to take back the controls, Connie.
Okay, Casey.
Thank you so much again. And then we'll transition to John. John, I see that you are muted on your end, so if you can attempt to unmute yourself. There you go.
All right.
Wonderful. Well, so John's going to present on host site match in monitoring and a few other topics, so take it away.
All right. Well, yes, my name is John Babbitt. I am the AmeriCorps coordinator for the Wisconsin Association for Homeless and Runaway Services. And we provide short-term crisis care for youth and families, mostly youth. We have 13 host sites throughout the state. And basically they provide street outreach, a 24-hour hotline, crisis counseling, and temporary shelter for youth. So our executive director, well, most of my experience really is on the programmatic side of this, and our executive director, Patricia Balke, handles most of the, or all of the fiscal management of the program. So I am presenting on a topic that I'm not really an expert on. So I'm going to do my best and hope for the best. So each program has essentially 3 funding sources. You have your money from your AmeriCorps federal grant and then your match requirements. Your match is built into your proposal at the beginning of each year, and the amount of match that you're required depends on how long your program is in operation. So the longer your program, the more match you're required to have. Match breaks down into basically 2 categories, cash and in-kind. The cash portion of our program is what our host sites contribute for their members. We ask them to contribute $6,000 for their full-time members and $3,000 for half-time members. And then the in-kind contributions take several forms. We have in-kind for travel. That would be member travel for their outreach and to the trainings that they attend. Member supplies, office supplies count for match, and the match is figured on a percentage basis of members. For example, if we had 6 total staff at a site and 3 of the staff were AmeriCorps members, then 50% of the office supplies and things that they use they would be able to count that as match. There can be some direct costs for that too as well. They produce, we have resource cards that they distribute on the street for outreach. So that would be 100% match number. Other equipment costs, direct equipment costs, would be the use of their cell phones and pagers that they need to do their street outreach. Other match requirements are utilities and office rent, and also then their phone bills are counted. So again, those utilities, rent, and phone bills are also a percentage match, again, similar to what we talked about with supplies. So those costs are tracked on a form that we have that I believe is listed here, our host site in-kind worksheet, WARS AC in-kind worksheet, and these categories are listed on the sheet. The travel, supplies, equipment, office space, and utilities. And we ask the host sites to keep the documentation for all of those costs on site, the receipts, etc. Yeah, you can see a copy of that. Another match requirement then is also the supervisors' in-kind time. They track their hours that they spend directly supervising their AmeriCorps members, and that is tracked on Encore timesheets and approved by Patricia, the WARS Executive Director. And that match requirement is calculated on Encore. You can find it on Encore in their time tracking tab. Monitoring of the financial aspects of our program. We do, when we have new site supervisors, we will go and meet with them and take them through all of the financial responsibilities and how to handle the match. We meet with, for new members, we meet with them once a year, then every 2 years, and after 5 years, we will meet with them as needed. Of course, there's always phone and email conversation if there's any questions that come up. We always meet with new directors, and each of our host sites are also have an independent audit each year. Patricia has put together a document that she has developed from the many regional trainings that AmeriCorps has provided on financial management. And that document is called the AC Site Visit Financial Review document, which Casey has and also is on Wigio. And that document has several categories. We check for their general financial management practices, how their accounting system works, their financial management policies and procedures, dealing with cash management, receipts, disbursements, payments, etc. We go over their recent audit and their A133 audit report and management letter, as well as their recent IRS Form 990. Then there's the next category is grant fiscal management. Again, we have a description of their financial and fiscal management responsibilities within their agency, who takes care of what tasks. A chart of accounting to see where the money comes from, CNCS, state and federal grants, their internal controls, and delegation of authority to different tasks that they all take care of. We review their purchase orders, contracts, agreements, supplies and equipment, their travel stubs, and just try to establish clearly, clearly within each agency who reviews all these documents and maintains the invoices and paper backup. We We monitor their records and reports for the grant expenditures and match payments. We look at examples of their financial accounting system and reports and records corresponding to their most recently submitted financial and expenditure reports. We check their supporting documentation for their cash and in-kind match, and check to see that their match accounts, or their match amounts in their accounting system match their financial reports. We check the source documentation for all their cash and in-kind contributions. Who is responsible for their payment requests and drawdowns. We also review their procurement contracts, purchase orders, and then their review of their timesheets. And that really is the information that I have. If you have questions, Patricia would be more than happy to answer your questions. She is will be available in a couple of days. She's recovering from some surgery, and that is really what I have. So I hope it was helpful, and if you have further questions, again, I would refer you to Patricia.
Great, John. Thank you. In addition to Patricia, you know, feel free to ask your questions now. One of our House's program officers can try to tackle it. Again, all the resources that John had presented on are on Wigio and on the webinar here today. So huge thanks to both our presenters. I do have a announcement that I had forgot to mention when we were looking at Wigio, so I'm just going to bring that back real quickly so I can remind you all to, Amy had posted yesterday on a survey, the Aligning Your Program and Illustrating Evidence survey that's posted on Wigio. It'll link you out to a SurveyMonkey survey. The deadline for that is this Friday, noon on Friday, the 15th. So please take a moment out of this week and fill that out. All right. We'll jump on back. Let's see. So as a reminder, the recording of this webinar will be posted in the next few days. I'm not seeing any questions come in at the moment, but now is your opportunity to do so. Either type it in the chat box, as I mentioned, or raise your hand. Well, both of our presenters will stick around for a few moments. Otherwise, thank you both. All right, I am not seeing any questions come in or any hands raised. So at the conclusion of this webinar, you should receive a follow-up survey. We really appreciate if you can let us know your opinions on the topic or our new webinar software that we're using. And I can draw attention maybe to our next one that's scheduled. I think we're on for August 10th at 1 p.m. That's what's showing on the Wigio calendar. So we'll look forward to seeing you there. Thanks again for everyone attending, and special thanks to Connie and John. This concludes our webinar.